Welcome to our session on behavioral interviews. Specifically, we're focusing on the STAR method as it applies to developers. So what is the STAR method? It's a structured approach used in interviews to assess how you handle real-life situations. Each letter stands for a key component: situation, task, action, and result. Let's break it down with an example. Imagine they ask, "Tell me about a time when you had to solve a complex bug." You would start by describing the situation. A critical bug was causing our app to crash on mobile devices. Then explain your task. I needed to find and fix this issue before our next release. Next, detail what actions you took. After analyzing logs, I identified a memory leak in the codebase. Finally, highlight the result. By optimizing the memory usage, we resolved the bug and improved app performance by 20%. This method not only showcases your technical skills, but also demonstrates your problem-solving abilities. Welcome, everyone. In today's tutorial, we're diving into the STAR method, a powerful tool to ace behavioral interviews. First up, let's break down what exactly a behavioral interview is and why it matters for developers. Then, we'll explore how to apply the STAR method in technical interview scenarios, using real-world examples that you can relate to. We'll also cover common mistakes to avoid so your responses shine. Finally, I'll wrap up with some key takeaways and next steps to ensure you're fully prepared. By the end of this session, you'll be well-equipped to handle any behavioral questions that come your way in tech interviews. Let's get started. Welcome to our session on the STAR method, a powerful tool for acing technical interviews. The STAR approach stands for situation, task, action, and result. It's not just for salespeople or managers. Developers can use it too. Here's how it works. Situation sets the stage. Describe the context. For example, I was working on a project that required integrating a new database system. The task is about defining your role in this scenario. Like, my task was to design and implement the integration process. Next, the action section focuses on what you did. Maybe, I researched different solutions and proposed a plan using agile methodologies. Finally, the result should highlight what happened as a consequence of your actions. For instance, this led to a 20% improvement in data management efficiency. This method helps structure your responses clearly and concisely. Alright, let's take a look at this Python function. It's called and it takes in one parameter. The function checks if the user input is help. If it is, it returns some helpful tips. But if the input isn't recognized, it politely says it doesn't understand. This kind of function might be useful in a chatbot or command line interface where you need to handle different types of user commands. In behavioral interviews, especially when using the STAR method, situation, task, action, result. This is a great example of how to demonstrate your problem-solving skills and attention to detail. By breaking down complex interactions into clear, manageable parts, like checking for specific keywords or responses, you can effectively handle a wide range of user inputs. Welcome to this interactive quiz slide. Let's break down what this function does. It takes user input as its main task. If the input is help, it spits out a helpful message, like, enter your command or type help for assistance. But if you enter something else, it gives an error message to let you know that's not recognized. Think of this like a simple chatbot response system. For example, imagine you're building a weather app and someone types weather. If we want the app to respond with a helpful hint, our function would trigger the help message. But if they type something random like purple elephant, it would give an error message. Ready to test your understanding? Let's move on to the next slide. So, let's dive into behavioral interviews and how to ace them using the STAR method. Imagine you're in an interview and they ask, describe a time when you faced a challenging coding problem. This is your chance to shine. Let's break it down. Situation set the scene. For example, during my project on building a real-time chat application, tasks state what needed to be done. Like, we encountered an unexpected bug that slowed down our server responses. Action detail how you tackled the issue. Say, I led a team of 3 developers to isolate and fix the problem by optimizing our code. Result: conclude with the outcome, such as, this improved response time significantly, making the chat application more user-friendly. Practice this method, and you'll be ready for any behavioral interview question. Hey there, welcome back to our tech interview series. Today, we're diving into the heart of behavioral interviews and how you can structure your answers using the STAR method. Let's break it down. Not using the STAR method often leads to vague responses that don't clearly demonstrate your skills or experiences. But fear not. By using the STAR method: situation, task, action, result, you'll deliver clear, concise, and well-organized answers. For example, if you're asked about a project you led, explain the situation, like, we were behind schedule. What task you took on? I managed the team's workload redistribution. Your actions? I created a detailed timeline to reallocate tasks effectively. And the result? Our project was completed ahead of deadline with higher quality output. It's like organizing your thoughts into a neat package. Let's make those interviews a breeze. Alright, let's dive into this example. We have a function called that takes in a problem description. The goal is to identify memory leaks and apply optimization techniques to fix them. Now, remember, when you encounter such problems during an interview, start by carefully analyzing the code. Look for any variables or data structures that might not be getting released properly. Next, implement specific memory optimization strategies. For instance, if you're using a programming language like Python, you could use context managers to ensure resources are properly closed and garbage collected. In this case, we return memory leak fixed once the issue is resolved. This function demonstrates your ability to diagnose and fix real-world issues, a key skill in any developer's toolkit. Alright, let's get into today's quiz on how to structure your answer during a behavioral interview. The key method you should use is the STAR method. Let me break it down for you. Think of a time when you faced a challenge in your previous role. First, describe the situation, what was going on. Then, state the task, what specific task or goal were you trying to achieve. Next, outline the action, what did you do about it. And finally, highlight the result, what happened because of your actions. For example, if you worked on a project that faced delays, describe the situation, what needed to be done, how you tackled the problem, and ultimately the positive outcome. This structure helps interviewers understand your problem-solving skills clearly. Now it's your turn. See if you can apply the STAR method in answering questions during an interview. Welcome to today's tutorial on the STAR method for developers. This technique is crucial when answering behavioral interview questions. Let's break down what STAR stands for: situation, task, action, and result. Imagine a scenario where you were tasked with improving team communication in your last project. For situation, describe the context. Perhaps there was frequent miscommunication leading to delays. In task, outline your role. Maybe you were assigned to enhance internal communication tools or streamline reporting processes. Under action, detail the steps you took, like implementing a new project management tool and organizing training sessions for your team. Lastly, in result, quantify success. Perhaps productivity increased by 20% and team satisfaction rose after these changes. This method not only structures your response but also highlights your problem-solving skills effectively. When it comes to behavioral interviews, especially using the STAR method, specificity is key. Let's take a look at 2 answers for the same question. Tell me about a project you worked on. The vague answer might just say, I worked on a project, which doesn't give any detail or impact. But when you use the specific approach, it really stands out. For example, in the XYZ project, I was responsible for optimizing database queries, which improved performance by 30%. This not only shows your involvement but also quantifies the outcome. It clearly demonstrates problem-solving skills and tangible results, making a much stronger impression on the interviewer. Alright, let's take a look at this piece of code. It might seem simple, but it's actually a common mistake during interviews, responding too vaguely to questions about past experiences. Here's the code. This response is generic and doesn't provide any specific details or context. In an interview setting, especially when using the STAR method, situation, task, action, result, you want to be much more precise. For example, instead of just saying, "I worked on a project," you could say something like, "This gives the interviewer a clear picture of your experience and the impact you made." Alright, let's dive into this example of an output slide. Now, you might be wondering, what makes an output slide valuable in a behavioral interview? Well, the key is to provide concrete examples that showcase your problem-solving skills and specific actions taken. This slide, however, simply prints out a generic statement. "I worked on a project." It lacks any detail or context. For instance, imagine instead showing how you optimized code for better performance, or how you implemented a new feature solving user feedback issues. These examples are much more impactful because they demonstrate your technical skills and problem-solving abilities in real situations. Alright, let's take a closer look at this code snippet. It's a function called optimize_project, which takes in a project as an argument. Inside the function, it says to analyze the code and implement optimization techniques, like cleaning up unnecessary lines or improving performance. The function then returns a simple message saying, "Project optimized." This is just an example, but think about how you would approach optimizing a real-world project. For instance, if this was part of your behavioral interview using the STAR method, you might talk about analyzing the current state of the code, identifying bottlenecks, and implementing specific optimizations based on that analysis. It's all about showcasing your problem-solving skills and technical expertise. Now, let's look at an example of demonstrating problem-solving skills using the situation, task, action, result, STAR method. Here's a Python function that illustrates how you might approach optimizing a project step by step. The code starts by analyzing the current state of the project and then applies specific optimization techniques before returning a message confirming the project is now optimized. This not only shows your technical skills, but also your ability to break down complex problems into manageable tasks, which is crucial in any developer role. Welcome to this segment on the STAR method for behavioral interviews. The STAR method is a powerful tool that helps you structure your responses, making them clear and specific. Stands for situation, task, action, and result. Let's break it down. Start by describing the situation briefly. Think of it as setting the stage. Then outline the task at hand. You need to show what was expected of you in this scenario. Next, detail your actions. This is where you highlight those problem-solving skills. Finally, wrap up with the results. Quantify them if possible. Numbers and metrics really make a difference. Remember, use real-world examples from your past experiences. This will not only make your answers more compelling but also demonstrate your ability to handle challenges effectively.